Hey there, this is Matthew Jennings, and on this episode of Peachjar Extra Credit, I am here with Gretchen Shipley and F3. We are going to be talking from a kind of a legal standpoint, social media, and navigating that space, so stick around. Gretchen, thank you so much for being here with me today to talk social media from the lens of kind of that legal standpoint and an attorney's lens. I really appreciate it. Let's start off with you. Tell the viewers a little bit about yourself, who you are, where we are. We're in the headquarters here. I've gotten to work with F3 for many years. This is really cool to actually be here. I've looked through some of the law books, which is really, for some, probably boring. For me, I found it a little fascinating. But tell us a little about yourself and where we are.
Great. Thank you for having me. My name is Gretchen Shipley. I'm a partner at the law firm of Fagan, Friedman, and Fullfrost, which is why we call ourselves F3 Law. But we are school attorneys, and we represent school districts throughout the country. And all we practice is school law, helping school districts navigate challenges, anything related to education, but I specialize in education technology. And so I provide a lot of guidance and answer a lot of questions on social media and how to manage it in particular. So thank you for having me, and I'm excited to talk about it today.
That's awesome. I know I have had the benefit of working with F3 in all three of my previous districts as in the communications office in that role. Can't speak highly enough about the team, always on the spot, always taking my calls. Didn't matter when I called, always got an answer. What do you need? What's going on? Just can't speak highly enough.
I don't know what you're encouraging here about this 24/7 service. No, I'm just kidding.
No, but yeah, it is really good, and so it is fun. I really truly mean it. It's really fun for me to be here with you. So I have some questions with me that I've got kind of prepared here. These are things that I've heard traveling around, other school conferences and specifically around communications and kind of from that director's lens, director of communications or a PIO.
Right.
So we'll go through these, and we're just going to jump in with social media and what advice you might have for school districts on managing kind of that staff communications component with students on social media. This is a question that comes up a lot, like staff interacting with students or students, friending teachers or in the comment section. So just what advice do you have on managing?
So as a baseline matter, why are you talking to a lawyer about this? Because it's a legal problem.
Yes.
Because these are questions I get day in and day out of. It may be very well intentioned, but it can easily turn into misconduct, either on the student's part or the staff member's part. And so we do a lot of guidance to school districts as a whole on how they can train their staff, what policies and procedures they can put in place so we can protect the teachers, protect the students, protect the district. But really, there's some real key takeaways that I share with staff when I do professional development training. And one thing is a school district can't outright ban a teacher from communicating with a student online because, there's the freedom of association that, a lot of times teachers have their own student, their own child is a student. Okay. And so some school districts have tried to do that, and you can't really ban it. But I would love to tell a teacher it is not a good idea for many reasons. Usually not very much good comes of it. Yeah. So the challenges, it's social barriers.
Yeah.
On both ends. A teacher doesn't want to attend the high school party on the weekends. Why do you want to see all the pictures, see the live stream? You're also a mandated reporter. It can trigger your obligation to report abuse, neglect. What if there's a weapon in the, so it really is hard for a teacher to take on that responsibility. Yeah. On the other hand, teachers are people too, and they go on vacation, and they may have a picture in a bathing suit, and they don't want all their students to see that.
No, that'll circulate.
Yeah. So I try to empower teachers to say, it's okay to tell your students, I don't accept friend requests. Mm-hmm. And then the other part is sometimes it can be really taken out of context, even if it's well-intentioned. Sometimes students are the aggressors. Yep. You may have a really aggressive 17-year-old girl who is really trying to entrap a teacher into a relationship maybe, or it comes off as grooming if they end up having a relationship when that student is an adult. And so it can really easily be taken out of context. And so I just really caution teachers, try not to engage with them on social media. If for whatever reason you feel like you have to or you need to, just be very mindful about creating some boundaries and appropriate behavior between a staff and a student.
Yeah, boundaries are healthy. It's an okay thing. And I know that we have, in previous districts that I've been in, there have been certain spaces on social media, like a teacher will create a private space for a group of students, maybe in theater, but all the parents are also invited to that space, right? And so that's another way to kind of accountability and make sure everything's transparent and above board. In a previous district I was in here in San Diego County, they were really forward thinking in a lot of their board policies and administrative regulations, leading the charge in a lot of really critical areas. And one of those things that I found interesting was we had every new employee sign an administrative regulation that outlined some really great guidelines about establishing social media accounts and relationships and avoiding friending students and accepting student, friend requests, and just a really great AR that incoming staff had to acknowledge that they read and received. So it kind of goes back to your point of just having a foundation that everyone can point back to is a really great idea. So let's say there is something, you mentioned like could be, a teacher has accepted a student friend request. Is that grounds for staff discipline?
Oh, no. I mean, simply being friends with a student isn't necessarily, because you can't ban it.
Okay.
But it's what transpires. I mean, it's if something inappropriate transpires, that can be grounds for teacher discipline. And like I said, there is a really interesting case that came out of San Diego County where we're located, where a teacher posted on social media inappropriate nude photos of themselves. Okay. And the question, they were an elementary school teacher, and they got disciplined. They were terminated for it. And a school district, he challenged it and said, there's no nexus to my job. There's no evidence a student saw it. And the termination ultimately was upheld because his principal said, well, I lost confidence in your ability to be a good role model to students, even online. And that was enough of a connection to his job. And so it seems like a really unfair decision for teachers to say, wow, I have to be a role model to kids, even online, even on my social media page. But that's what the court found. And it's a good reminder to staff that you're a public employee, you're a role model to kids, even in the way you conduct yourself in your personal life. And in that case, nude images online came back to bite him, and he lost his job over it, even though he didn't think a kid would ever see it.
It's so true. It's so true. And I know that, oftentimes when I'm with my friends in education and maybe we're at a private event, but somebody's like, oh, let's take a selfie. It's really funny how hypersensitive everyone is to maybe there's an alcoholic beverage in the background or something. Everything gets swept clean, right? Because you do have to model best behavior. As a public employee, there will be interest in you potentially, and people look stuff up. And I think it's very interesting on social media how anybody at any time can have any sort of expectation of privacy, because there's not, right? I mean, once you post something out there to the internet, that's posted to the internet.
Yeah, and people can take a screenshot too, even if you try to take it down.
Right? So you could try to take it down, or you could have somebody that's in your friends list, they take a screenshot, they take exception to your behavior, and then they want to post that out. I mean, these things can really gain a lot of traction unintentionally. And that's why in the trainings that I've gotten to host with staff, it's really just, we always have to just be modeling best behavior. All right, we talked a little bit about staff trainings, and we've talked about, kind of that social media process in general and how that works with, staff discipline and friending students. What about school districts managing, or what jurisdiction, what responsibilities do they have over all the different social media platforms? Because athletics can have one, each school can have multiple accounts. What's the district's role in all that?
So this is something that I think is a call to action for school districts. School districts are responsible for monitoring and supervising all district social media accounts. Well, what's a district social media account? With so many different platforms out there now, a district office might have an Instagram and a Twitter and a Facebook, and then each school site might have several platforms. But then what about, you mentioned the athletic teams and the school clubs and how much is a district truly able to monitor and supervise? And so what I recommend any school district do is maybe try to draw some boundaries or some limits around what is a school district willing to take responsibility for. I mean, you only have so many resources to monitor and supervise these accounts. And so I think the first thing a school district should do is find out how many accounts you have.
Okay.
Somebody over the summer should say, how many social media accounts do we have that are attributed to the district? Who is the primary contact person? Who has access? Because where I come in, again, lawyer, why are we talking to me? It's when it is 10 o'clock on a Friday night and someone has posted a threat against the school or something racist, something awful that needs to get taken down. In a school district, like 90% of the time is scrambling to figure out whose account is this? How do we get access to it? How do we get it taken down?
Yes.
So my takeaway is go ahead and figure out what accounts do you have and who has access.
Yeah.
And if it's I don't recommend it be a student because it's the ASB president, they graduate. And year after year, you need to make sure that's updated. So a few things a school district can do is say, we're going to have district managed accounts, and those are only the district sites and the school site platforms. Everything else is going to be considered district affiliated. And if you are district affiliated, you have to disclaim that this is run by a student or run by a parent or run by a teacher. It is not monitored and supervised by the district, but then give them guidelines about they shouldn't tolerate obscenity or, code of conduct or threats or,
the
hate
same
speech.
guidelines you probably have as a district.
And exactly. But help them know how to manage a social media site, but also they're going to be held accountable for taking those things down if inappropriate conduct comes out.
That makes a lot of sense. I had in a previous district a really phenomenal communication specialist, and I had her do exactly that one summer, get a hold of all the schools, get a hold of all their social media accounts, and then we took it a step further because what we found was so-and-so that managed it would leave. And maybe they don't even leave on good terms.
Right.
And they've got the passwords to the accounts. And then I'd have some poor principal come in saying, how do I get into my Facebook account? I don't have the password. And there's no one to call at Facebook.
Right.
You're in a world of pain on that, especially if that individual has gone rogue and now it's an official school account that there's misinformation on. So what we did one summer was we got a spreadsheet out. We got all the schools. We got all of their social media feeds. We got all the passwords and logins to each one. And we kept that in the communications office. So we had a master list and a master login. So 2:30 in the morning, if I had to have access, I could go in and do something about it. It was never to go in and manage their accounts. What I found really awesome is like just an ancillary benefit from that was when I would go out and cover a play or something and I came back and I was posting on, the district social media feeds. I was able to use that document to get all their handles really easy, and I could tag all the different schools super efficiently and not have to look them all back up. So I loved that just selfishly, but pulling those reins back in. And then we had board policy. We adopted board policy around how an account is official. It has to be by the superintendent or the superintendent's designee. It has to be recognized that way. We even went as far to spell out what that disclaimer is that would be on social media. And if you had an affiliated account, that you had to have that disclaimer like posted at the top of your account so that people would see immediately, well, this isn't an official school account.
That reminds me of like a little inside trick. School districts, a lot of them struggle with what to do about parent groups creating their own accounts and trying to affiliate them with the district, or students trying to make accounts that look like they are a school district account. They use the district's logo.
Yes.
It's hard, as you mentioned, and we can talk about that too, is how you get something taken down from a platform. But if they're using your logo, that's usually copyright infringement. And that right there is legal grounds to say not only should they not be misrepresenting that they're affiliated with the district, but they're not supposed to use your logo either. So just a little tip of how you can get somebody to remove their account right away.
I know that at least one example, it was a very friendly worded letter from our attorney. to said individual, and it was removed fairly quickly.
So there you go.
It has that impact on people. Okay, so let me just look here. We're doing really great. I only have a few more questions for you. I want to touch on a really hot topic that comes up everywhere I go, and every session I've ever sat in about social media at any conference, at any state, this always comes up. What about deleting, removing, hiding comments on social media?
Okay, we all know that we are in a time where people have very strong opinions and are very outspoken for or against school district policy. So your social media can become, either intentionally or unintentionally, a public forum for free speech. And so how do you put some parameters in place where a district can have control over that it stays productive and appropriate and in a school environment? So there's a few ways you can manage it. Now, keep in mind that if you have a free speech forum, if you remove a post, it can be suppressing someone's free speech. So it could be inviting a lawsuit. You can't suppress a comment. You can't remove a comment just because you don't like their opinion about school policy. You can remove it if it is obscene or it's a threat. And often cases you can front load this with some guidance that if it is off topic, school related matters. But it gets a little bit gray when it is they want to talk about something that is a school policy they disagree with, and it's a little off topic. That is an area where I would say check with your district's legal counsel before you go ahead and take someone's comment down in that context. But so I just think that it's something where disclaimers and some training. And another tip is you don't have to leave the comments on.
That's true.
School districts can use social media as a one-way communication to promote and highlight school events with a really broad audience, wide-reaching, and you don't have to invite comments from the public. You can keep them all off.
It's so true. And just a couple of things that you said in there. I had in my one of my previous districts, I was on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, like the three out of the four. And I only allowed comments, I think it was on Facebook, because as the person that had to moderate all the comments, I didn't want to turn off comments necessarily on that space. And I'll tell you why. Because the algorithm and how the analytics and the algorithm works, we knew that most of our audience was on Facebook. That's how I was going to reach the majority of my parents. What I chose to do was limit kind of the level of pain that I had in monitoring, right? So I only opened up comments on Facebook. So if you wanted to interact with a post two-way, it had to be in that space. That was a lot easier for me to manage and monitor. And that helps. So I encouraged comments because the more I got out there, if I posted a school play, for example, and people were like, I love this. This is great. Oh my gosh. Oh, my kids, third row. The more people see that post, and then it would go beyond just my followers and it more broadly in the community. So other community members that might not even have kids in my district are seeing the post, cute little school play, which is really great, right? That's what we want. We want social media to be social, but you do have to choose your threshold there and the way you manage that. So that was kind of one of the things that I did in a previous district was kind of to limit that. And then another thing that I did, like in that space, as I was moderating comments, if there was something totally off topic, like an example would be I post that school play video, really cute video, and somebody gets on and says, they're concerned about library books. I know that's a hot topic out right now, right? What books are in the library? How do they get in the library? Valid concern. Like it's off topic. It has nothing to do with the school play. So I don't want to ignore it, but I'm also not going to get into it in the comment section. So what I would do myself, and I encourage other PIOs, is get in there, acknowledge the comment, and provide your contact information. Hey, I'd love to talk to you about this more. Here's my email address. Here's my phone number. Give me a call. We can set up a time that's convenient for you so we can talk through that process and how that works. And
that's great.
Shows everybody else.
Absolutely.
Oh, you're responsive. Okay, so if I ask a question, the district's going to respond. That's pretty cool. Oh, look, they took care of that person's concern. So it just helps everybody.
Absolutely. What a great tip.
So on that, kind of not in the same frame of reference, but let's shoot over to student accounts.
Okay.
What jurisdiction do school districts have over student social media accounts?
And again, hot legal topic. This is and tricky. So a school district, again, I really feel for school district administrators that are just trying to educate kids and having to play whack-a-mole on social media accounts at the same time.
All the time.
Yeah. So basically what it comes down to in your question is, when can a school district discipline a student for their off-campus cyber speech? When does it become an issue for the school district? And the legal rule, which again came out in the 1960s before there ever was social media, but off-campus speech, when can you regulate it? The general rule is when it causes a substantial disruption on campus, or is likely to cause a substantial disruption. So when does the school district have jurisdiction? When it becomes a problem in their backyard. A threat against the school is, first of all, is not protected speech, but is also likely to cause a disruption on campus, or some sort of threat. Anything where the news media is showing up on campus, or students are missing class, or they're not showing up, or there's an argument at school, all because of a social media post. That's a substantial disruption on campus. So that's sort of the general rule. I will tell you what's really fascinating is the U.S. Supreme Court recently took up this issue. There's a U.S. Supreme Court case called Mahanoy, and we'll provide a link. We have a newsflash at f3law.com/newsflash, and we'll link to it. Recent Supreme Court decision where a cheerleader did post, or a student posted, F cheer, F softball, F school, F everything, but she didn't say F. And the school went to discipline her, and it went all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court as to whether or not they had jurisdiction. And ultimately, the court said, it didn't cause a substantial disruption on campus. There is still this concept of in loco parentis, that there are parents can also discipline kids, it's not always the school district's job. And so it's a really interesting decision to read and understand about how they treated her behavior. But ultimately, there is a line. If a school district can invoke discipline if it's disruptive or likely to become disruptive on campus. I will also say, if it's a problem on campus and you're not sure, you can always talk to a student. You can always ask them to take it down. You can counsel a student. You can call their parents. That's not necessarily discipline. So if you're not sure about whether or not you have jurisdiction, you can always talk to your school district lawyer. But just keep in mind, short of discipline, there's a lot of things you can do just to manage inappropriate posts.
That's so true. I've had that personal experience over the years, and sometimes it's just going back and talking with the family, and then the realization that that might not be the most appropriate thing, and then it's removed. The other thing too is you touched on it, and that's parents and involving them in the conversation. And I know a few really great school districts out there doing good work around the education of parents and holding parent academies, and social media is one of those big topics.
Right.
Where is the district accountable? Where are you accountable? What can you do at home? What kind of rules and parameters and boundaries can you set with your children? How do you monitor their accounts? I mean, there's a lot that goes into that.
Well, and I should mention F3 Law. We have a free resource, little plug here, but we do. Yeah. It's for exactly that. It is a 5-minute free video that was created with California IT and Education, and it is a presentation called Pause Before You Post. And the whole point is to remind parents, staff, students, sort of the dangers you can get into if you don't stop and think before you post something. But it's really effective, and it's available for free on our website, f3law.com/privacy. And maybe you could link to it if they would like to use it. It's absolutely meant to be shared with a PTA or a back to school night. Perfect. Or however, shoot it out to your families, however they'd like to use it.
That's so cool. We will definitely link to that in the description. So look for that. And it sounds like a really great resource to be sharing out with families. All right, so we're almost done here. I promise. I'm grilling you on some of these. This is
like
great.
I'm being cross-examined in a deposition or something.
These are just really great questions that always come up. And so we've talked about staff. We've talked about students. Let's talk about board members. What are your recommendations for board members managing social media accounts? So
board members are tough. And what's interesting is board members are public officials. Yes. They enjoy less privacy rights than the average Joe. Okay. So there is a body of law out there that says if you're a public official and you're on social media talking about the public's business, you may have created a free speech forum. You may be prohibited from actually blocking comments from community members that are critical of you or critical of the district policy. And that's not a place many board members want to sit in. So we provide a lot of guidance to board members on how you can set up your social media accounts to manage that Either you have a personal one that's separate from your board member's social media account, or does a board member really need their own district social media account when the school district has a social media account? So what's interesting is out here in California, there's a recent case called Garnier, which ruled on that and found that a school board member was prohibited from blocking these unwelcome comments. And the U.S. Supreme Court has taken up the case. It's May 2023 right now. It's going to be heard in fall 2023. Okay. And so we're expecting a U.S. Supreme Court decision specifically talking about when can a school board member hide comments, block comments, not friend people in the community. And I think it'll be really helpful. We issue news flashes anytime a new decision like that comes out. So if people want to sign up for our news flashes, it would be at f3law.com/newsflash.
Yeah, those are great. I get those. They are really helpful. I have board members over the years that it's like, if I'm not out there highlighting all the work that I'm doing to be a board member out in the district and all the great things we're doing as a district, and I'm not on social media, am I really a board member? Right. And so it can get really tricky. Even board members liking and following each other and commenting on each other's posts can get kind of a slippery slope there with Brown Act violations and different things. So
open meetings laws often also apply to social media. You're not supposed to have a majority of the board communicating outside of a publicly noticed meeting, including on social media. So that's another training that we do for board members, is to help them understand the limits and responsibilities they have. That's
a huge one. And I'm not sure how many of you know that out there, or maybe even consider the space of social media a place of a potential Brown Act violation, right. But it's certainly there. Okay, so the last thing I kind of want to ask you here is, those accounts out there run by parents that are critical of the district.
Right.
Might have really valid concerns, not judging the accounts and the why, but what tips do you have for school districts on managing kind of that relationship and those social accounts that are out there that are just created to be critical of the district?
So again, a school district doesn't have, you can't discipline a parent, so, and you can't discipline a student for their parents' behavior.
Right.
Unfortunately, no. So, simply being critical of the district is not something that is actionable, but sometimes it goes beyond simply being critical of district policy. And a lot of districts feel helpless that they can't do anything. And so I try to say, well, there are tools out there. And I sort of have a cascading list of steps you can consider. The first one being, you can always ask somebody to remove something. You can just ask them. I mean, they don't necessarily have to, but if it's unpleasant and it's unwelcome and you don't like it out there, pick up the phone and call somebody and talk about their issue and say, this isn't good for the community to have this out there. Would you take it down? They might say yes, they might say no. The second is, if it is truly inappropriate, you can report it to the platform. And I know people will hear that and think, I've reported these things, nothing ever happens. There have been several laws passed recently to make reporting easier. Okay. In California, 5 laws were passed this year.
Amen.
It
needed to happen.
Where the platforms themselves have to make reporting, they have to provide more tools, more resources, make it more clear on how you can make the request to have it taken down. A third step you can take is, if it rises to the level of reporting it to law enforcement. For example, let's say they're posting somebody's home address and encouraging them to come and pick it in front of your house. Yeah. That could be a safety issue. And so you might want to contact law enforcement. Law enforcement, I feel like, has more of a bat phone line directly to social media
There's something there,
platforms.
Yeah, I agree.
That they can have things, sometimes they're more effective in being able to take things down. And then if it really rises to the level, I certainly as a lawyer get these phone calls day in, day out. If it is really abusive towards a board member, a superintendent, or a principal, we will send a cease and desist letter. Okay. It can be harassment. It can be slander, libel, defamation, and say, you take this down or we're going to have to take a legal action. And then if they still don't comply, what that legal action looks like is it's usually called an injunction, which an injunction is anybody can go into court and ask for an injunction if a judge agrees, they'd have a court order requiring the parent to take that post down. And then there's always civil litigation. Someone can always sue another person for harassment. And so, again, I'm not encouraging litigation. I just want people to know you're not helpless. If you're being abused online, there are things you can do. There are steps you can take to try to have all that harmful or hurtful content removed.
That's really good. I had kind of a step down from that. No one was being abused necessarily, although there were some really hypercritical things that were in that space. But in a previous district, I had a parent start a Facebook group, a private Facebook group, because they felt that parents needed a place to go and vent and discuss the district. And they didn't feel comfortable doing that on the official district account. And so they created this space, and it quickly grew, very, very quickly grew in followers. And I was made aware of it by a couple of concerned parents that were concerned with some very just kind of blatant misinformation, because it's one thing to have a space to talk and have discussions, but if you aren't the source of information and misinformation is being spread, even some just basic stuff. I had a concerned parent, for example. I think that when I became aware of the account, they reached out because we had an upcoming board meeting and somebody wanted to know what time it was. And somebody said, well, it's 8 o'clock. Our board meetings are 6 o'clock. So that's not going to work. And then I'm going to be the one to get the calls. You changed the board meeting. It was supposed to be at 8 o'clock. No, it's always been 6 o'clock for 15 years, right? And so I knew I had to reach into the space. And what ended up happening as a result, maybe this isn't a solve for all of these, but as a result, I reached out to the parent that had set up the account and I said, hey, I'd love to meet with you. I'd love to meet with you quarterly. If you want to meet more often, we can meet once a month. You ask me questions that you're getting in that space. I'm happy to answer those questions, even if you get something in the moment. If something bubbles up in the moment and you just feel like you need help, hit me up that day. I'd be happy to point you directly to the source of that information. So if somebody's concerned with something happening in student services, I will get you the direct link to the document or whatever it is that we have in question so that you can then share it back out with the group. Not only was that kindly received, this person was all in on that, and we became friends. And over the course of this time, and ultimately, I was invited into the space because people were like, "Well, we do want right information," and they didn't necessarily see me as just a district shill trying to push the information down their neck. Right? It was more of I will point you to the right space to get that.
I also think a face-to-face conversation or picking up the telephone, because people hide behind social media and the anonymity of it. And if you can actually meet with somebody, chances are they're a lot less likely to turn around and start saying hateful and hurtful things. So
it's so true.
Good job.
It's so true. Well, I really appreciate this. That gets through all the questions that I had. I mean, I think we could spend probably 3 more hours on this. I know that, it's just one of those topics that anytime this comes up, at a state conference or whatever, they're always packed rooms. And I know you guys have done a lot of great work around education on this. So I can't thank you enough.
Thank you. And I do a ton of trainings for social media, for staff, for board members. We do it virtually, in person. So if anyone's interested, they're welcome to reach out.
That's so awesome. We're going to link back to F3 in the description. Great. So yeah, absolutely. If you feel like you need a deeper dive on this, have more questions, or just need more support, I can't say enough how phenomenal this team is. So
thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, well, thank you for being here and talking through it and kind of rapid fire on all the questions. I know it probably felt like you were being cross-examined. Hopefully you all found this helpful as well. And if you like this, please like, share, comment, follow for more. Stay tuned. I do have another couple of videos that we're doing here with Gretchen and F3. We're doing one on photos and when and where that can happen. We're doing one on Public Records Act and FOIA. So stay tuned so you don't miss out on those. And we've got a whole host of other content coming your way over the next few months. So that's all we got for right now. Thank you very much. We'll see you.